All right, welcome in, everybody. It is Wednesday. It's time for another edition of Full Court Press. Don't look now, but here come Rob and I on the parlays. Another winner last night. Rob, I feel like we've been in a little bit of an uphill battle to try to get back to even for like a month now. Actually, no, not quite that long. We had a shot to be even last week at one point. But I think we're 1-2 teamer away from getting the parlay back to even. Maybe we'll get crazy, throw a 3-teamer out there tonight. I don't know. But we got it done last night. Rob, kind of a little bit of a sweat there at the end of that Illinois regulation. Was hoping that we weren't going to be in a scenario where they were going to play for a stop, but we get overtime. And then Western Illinois breaks their 14-game losing streak. They win the conference game that I thought that they would win, and we get another parlay winner. So another 2-0 night for me, Rob. I feel like I'm seeing it well right now. How was the night for you?
There goes the dog. Last night was 2-3 in college hoop, Adam. So that would, for those who chose to be on the double the CBB firepower package, you get 4-3 yesterday from the two of us. Still a nice little profit. The early stuff was good. BYU, I chose to play their team total. They got way over their team total. You could have played full game total. We talked about it yesterday. Why the decrease from 164 down to 158.5 didn't make a lot of sense. Game hits 193, for goodness sakes. And then, as you mentioned, Illinois, which looked like a coast job the entire way. But I will say this, late in the night, I had a loss with Oklahoma that was a little bit disappointing. Team total over 78.5, only get to 76 with a zillion chances. Good win by Arizona State. So we move on to today. It's still been a great run since December 1st, up 50 units. So we will look for winners on today's card.
Before we get into it, I'll take the rare opportunity to promote myself, but it also it promotes Rob as well, because I have a 5% play college basketball tonight. It's my first one in a couple of weeks. I've won 6 straight. This is what I kind of like to do with the 5%ers. I like to kind of press them when things are going well, and things are going well. But the way to get that, the much better way to get that, in my opinion, is to just grab the package with myself and Rob, because, I mean, it's like when you look at the cost of one of those 5%ers, I think 2 covers the package cost, Rob. And if I win this one, I'm probably going to fire another one tomorrow, because that's how I roll. So, I mean, I think you should just do the double the firepower CBB package. Rob, people are like, where are the energy drinks? Long gone. I've been up since like 5 a.m. I'm already onto a Diet Coke here. You got to slow it down. Can't do 2 energy drinks, but it was a rainbow sherbet rain for those keeping track at home. All right, it's time to get into it. The people have filed in. Let's start in the SEC. Rematch of a game that we saw earlier this year, and a game that, when I remember us talking about this game, Florida, Georgia, when they played down at the Swamp, it was when Florida was still going through it a little bit. It was a terrible matchup back then for Georgia, and that was how it played out. It was a close first half. Florida exerted their will in the second half, ended up winning the game by 15. Still a bad matchup for Florida. Florida's playing much better now. This opened 7.5, all the way up to 9.5. Now, Robino, do you agree with that move? And do you have anything for us on the total?
Well, in terms of bad matchup, I mean, we can single out the boards, right? Interesting numbers on Florida and their rebounding over the course of this tremendous 9-game string that they're on, 8-1 straight up, 8-1 ATS. The only loss in there was that head scratcher to Auburn, where Auburn just came from left field and beat them outright. But other than that, 8 out of 9. Going through, back to the first game, Adam, Florida out-rebounds Georgia 56-35, plus 21 on the boards. End of story. But going through their 9-game stretch here, just to give you some numbers, 7 of the 9 games in this span, they've had a double-digit rebound advantage over the opponent. Only twice didn't, and once they had a 9-rebound advantage. They're number 2 in the entire nation in second chance points. And we talked about their front line from opening day. Not that that was news to anybody that Florida was going to have a dominant front line, but they have really exerted themselves here. And what's really interesting about Florida is that during this 9-game stretch, they don't shoot three-pointers well at all. They've been miserable. They don't need the three-pointer to beat these teams and beat them handily. It's kind of crazy. 5 times in the last 9 games, Florida has not even hit 30% of their threes. It's been less than 30. 6 times it's been 30 or less. Only twice in 9 games have they shot better than 33% from beyond the arc. They don't need it. It doesn't matter. They crushed Alabama by 23, shooting lousy from the three-point arc. They just destroyed Texas A&M, shooting 20-something% from beyond the three-point arc. Doesn't matter. They continue to beat people on the glass, and their defense has come around. 5 straight full game unders, 5 straight times their last 5 games where they've held their opponent under their team total. So, how does Georgia combat this? It's kind of crazy. They have already been beaten by this team by 15 once, and I don't know that the matchup changes any, except that I think we both feel like the backcourt of Lee and Fland is playing a little bit better than they were at that time, and not necessarily showing up in 3-point percentage, but certainly they're playing a little bit better. This is why Florida's on this great run. For Georgia, you want to, if you want to play them, you want to add the home court into your handicapping angle, right? Well, Georgia's at home. They could be good at home. 2-3 at home in SEC play, straight up and against the spread. The interesting thing about Georgia is they've got 5 home games. 3 of them have gone to overtime. They battle and battle and battle here on this floor. Overtime against Auburn, overtime against Ole Miss, overtime against Tennessee, lose them all. The other 2 games were a nice win over Arkansas by 14 and then a 15-point loss to A&M. Home floor aside here, Adam, it's kind of hard for me to see Georgia staying in it for 40 full minutes. The way Florida's rebounding and the way Florida's playing defense, that combination always travels, glass and defense. However, you're dealing with a pretty sizable number here, 9.5 at this point in time. Total up to 164.5. I could question that a little bit just because Florida's on this 5-game understring where they've just stopped opponents. And Georgia, I think we saw it in the Texas game, Adam, not that it was on their home floor, right? That was a Saturday game. I think UI and Kelly had that game. I think you had Texas that day. And Georgia went stagnant offensively for a long time. They got out to like some 24-16 lead or something. And then after that, they were just shut down by Texas. Could almost see that happening here, even on their home floor. I'm a little bit on the fence with this one because the money's come in so strong on Florida. Like, you got to win by 10 points now on the road, which is not the easiest thing to do inside this league. Florida does have Kentucky on deck. I don't know. My lean here would be towards Florida, despite the fact that you have to win by 10, just because I don't see how the first game doesn't repeat itself. It was a 15-point win then. I don't know. Is Georgia going to improve by 5 points here? Possible, but I'm not sure it will.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. The movement toward Florida up from 7 now to 9.5. I mean, if this were to continue to go 10.5, which I don't think will be the case, but if it did, I definitely think you could start to look at punching back with the Florida side. With the Georgia side. So let's look at the first meeting. You talked about a 15-point final margin. First half was close, second half wasn't. The rebounding disparity was always going to be there. What I found interesting about the first meeting, Georgia 4 for 19 from 3. If they could improve on that, maybe they could hang around. But what interests me, Rob, or what's interesting to me, Rob, is Blue Kane, who's kind of like their 3-point shoot. He's the guy that if he were to come out and have a huge game, hit 5-6 threes, I think that they could maybe be in the mix. But he's kind of been terrible this year shooting the ball. His shooting numbers, even though his points per game are up, at 3-point range, he was like a career 34% 3-point shooter. I remember getting to see him in a ballroom down in the Bahamas when he was a freshman. He's kind of like this goofy kid. I was like, who who's this guy, right? And then, I was watching him warm up, just an absolute sniper. He's down to like 26% from three this year. And, I don't think he hit one in that first meeting. So again, Georgia, that would be a way to stay in the game. I just don't know if I trust them to do that, though they could improve on 4 for 19. It's not that hard to improve on 4 for 19. That's not a very good mark shooting the ball from the first meeting. The other thing that's worth pointing out from the first meeting, Soto Ciro got thrown out of that game. So he only played 7 minutes. He got thrown out of the game, ejected for something. I don't remember what, but that's obviously notable. That being said, Georgia's going to be down Jeremiah Wilkinson here, who I believe has already been ruled out of this game. So it depends on what you make of that. I think the Wilkinson news is the reason that this moved where it did. So I read Wilkinson is out, but is that kind of a swap, right? Because you didn't really have Cyril in the first game. Now you would assume he's going to play the whole game here, because it was an ejection that caused him to miss the first game. But you lose Wilkinson, who's another, is just another one of your, pieces, right? So, I believe he's actually the top scorer. Correct me if I'm wrong. 17.1 points per game. He's probably their top scorer, and I believe he's out here. So am I dying to lay 10 with Florida? Not really. Could I see Georgia maybe improving on that first game? Yeah, if they can hit a couple threes. But going back to something you said, Rob, which is a point we've made on this show a couple of times, it's like Florida has done this in spite of poor guard play. And now they've started to get the guard play occasionally. But if Florida ever shows up and plays a game where Xavier Lee's playing well or Fland is playing well and they're getting production from their guards, it's going to be hard to stay within 10 against them. They're still very elite when that's the case. And the scary thing is they're probably elite when that isn't even the case. So, yeah, it's a tough one, maybe under a little bit, just because I don't know if it's going to be, like just a ton of points in this one. But boy, is this it's a daily occurrence here, Rob. The sort of game of the night game is like always the hardest one to handicap, but I suppose that's how it should be to an extent.
Yeah, speaking of, can Georgia improve from beyond the arc in this game, Adam, and where it could help? The counter to that would be, can the Florida guard play improve? We talked about how they weren't playing well, Fland and Lee, up until this 9-game string. They were 3 of 11 from the field, 1 for 8 from 3. Those numbers, even if they come up half a tick, it kind of negates Georgia's numbers coming up. So it's hard to see, other than home floor, Florida not showing up mentally, et cetera, which are all things that are hard to handicap, but they're definitely the better squad. And they're en route to, the way they're playing right now, they're playing Elite 8 status. And you just can't give these guys second chance points, but they continue to get. I mean, that front line is crazy good. So we'll see how it goes. Georgia has, as I mentioned, been feisty at home, 3 overtime games in 5 SEC contests on this floor. So it's no surprise if they do get a little feisty here, Adam. I just don't know that I want to put my money on that.
Yeah, me either. And I think I think we've hit that one enough. At some point on the show, we always find something that we want to put our money on. I think I'm on a pretty good string of actually giving out client plays on this show. So, it's one of the nice things about college basketball season and there being so many games. The volume's higher. When the volume's higher, I can spare 1 or 2 of the client plays. And as of right now, I only have the 5% locked in, but we'll see if we can find something else on the show. Okay, let's go to Garth. Let's head to the MAC. For some Wednesday Maction, Rob. Garth, appreciate the donation as always. He says thoughts on Toledo, Western Michigan. He likes the Western Michigan team total under 74.5 or the full game under 154.5. Rob, so when I look at Toledo, my sort of way into Toledo games earlier this year was recognizing their struggles against a zone. So this is not really going to speak toward what Garth wants to speak about. I'll kind of leave that Western Michigan angle to you. But the way I have seen Toledo games was early in the year, they really struggled against good zone defense. Now, I've gotten off of this a little bit because they've been better. They got better for a stretch. They sort of figured out the zone a little bit. That being said, I was never overly high on Toledo this year. I thought this would probably be one of the worst teams that they've had, that Ted Kowalczyk has had in a while. And yeah, it's sort of proving to look that way. They're inconsistent offensively. They struggle against the zone. They've managed to get to 6-5 in MAC play. But man, outside of Miami, Ohio, and Akron, and maybe you could throw Kent State into the mix there, the MAC isn't quite as good as I thought it was going to be. Some of the other teams that are typically up in the top, Toledo being one of them, Ohio, not quite as good as I thought they were going to be. And then the bottom half of the MAC really not being very good at all this year makes it difficult. This is this is a little bit of a sandwich game here, Rob, for Toledo. They had James Madison in the return leg of the Sun Belt MAC Challenge over the weekend. Lost that game 73-71. It was a good one. They put a lot into that. I think that was kind of a game that maybe they had a little bit more stock into than some of these other Sun Belt MAC games because James Madison's kind of a high-profile team from that league. And then, of course, this weekend will be the rematch of their rivalry with Bowling Green. So Toledo, Bowling Green, right down the street from each other. Great first game. They won it 73-72. If I remember correctly, they won it right at the end. And so now they have to head over to Bowling Green, the Stroh Center, this weekend. So this kind of is an interesting spot here. I don't know if I love Toledo laying points on the road in this spot, but is there anything to like about Western Michigan? And talk to me about Garth's total here. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, the number's been pushed down. About 1.5, 2 points right now. Staring at 154.5, like Garth lists right there, to get over 156.5. Toledo's in kind of a free fall offensively, Adam. It's 4 of their last 5 games, I think 75 or less, which isn't, Toledo's not going to win a lot of games scoring 75 or less because they're so defensively poor. But the first time around, and this was a while ago, right? December 30th seems like a 10 years ago. But on December the 30th, it goes 84-79, 163. Toledo, for what it's worth, only shot 16% from three-point land in that game and still got to 84 against Western Michigan. So, I guess the dilemma becomes, is the matchup really good for Toledo that they can get to 84 points, only hitting 4 of 25 from 3, missing 12 free throws, or is current form to be taken more into consideration? Because like I mentioned, Toledo's not the offensive team that they were to start the season. And Toledo hasn't played a who's who of defenses in this stretch, right? Like Bowling Green to only score 73, Ball State 73, Kent 72. Of course, James Madison's a pretty good team, 71 in that one. They're just not, generally you think of them as being in the 80s. And if this game's going to go over, you need it to be in the 80s. Western Michigan, I haven't talked about much because they just don't score. Which, again, going back to the original meeting and seeing 84-79 makes you think, is it matchup or is it current form? I kind of lean always towards current form. We've talked about this before. Overall statistics and earlier meetings can be skewed a little bit. And also coaches who like to fix what went wrong in that first game. It's a lot of points to be giving up. I'd probably slightly lean with the under, but I don't know that there's a lot of wiggle room here at 154.5. Honestly, it's a difficult bet to make. The under 74.5 Western Michigan team total. I guess if on your list of reasons to play it, the main reason is Western Michigan's not a good offensive team scoring wise, but the counter to that is Toledo's just not a great defensive team either. So again, this is a difficult one, Garth. I'm going to let you go whichever way you want to go. I won't be involved. If I had to, I'll say this. I'd be leery of playing under 154.5. I just think that number is susceptible. And, they probably pushed it down as far as you can go. We'll see how it rolls.
I'll take a stand real quick, Rob. The chat does not like the fence riding. So I'm going to come in and take a stand. If if I could trust Western Michigan's defense at all to play a somewhat competent zone here, I would be on Western Michigan in this spot. My number is shaded to thinking Western, like I'm closer to 5 than 7 here. I don't know what it is right now, but I was at like 5.1. I think it was like 6.5, maybe 7. So the problem is Western Michigan defensive rating on Ken Pom 332, right? So that it's very difficult to trust them to defend. But it's not the worst spot to go against Toledo. You had, you want to talk about just a little bit of Toledo taking that game against James Madison serious because James Madison's sort of like they've become a name out of the Sun Belt. They're always near the top of the Sun Belt. I think they even got into the top 25 a couple of years ago. When I went to see James Madison play 2 years ago with my buddy Aaron Kidd, they were nationally ranked team. So I do think they garner a little bit more respect, whereas Western Michigan just went down to Texas this weekend and couldn't have cared less. Got blown out. I don't think they put any stock into that game. I think they were looking toward this game, which is, Toledo's become a name in this conference. And then, of course, Toledo's got the rivalry on deck. So I do think there's a little bit of value there. I don't mind the spot. I lean toward Western Michigan plus the points. I will, like I said, taking a stand, Rob.
There you go.
And if you do get involved with the total, Garth, good luck. But the only way I could play would be just take the points and, hope that Toledo struggles to put the ball in the basket, which they have at times this year. All right, real quick promo. Like I said, I have a 5% play tonight. We have the Double the Firepower CBB package up on both of our pages. It's been really good the last, pretty much for the last couple weeks. Rob carried us through the first 2 months of the season. I'm trying to pick up the slack right now. I had a winning January. I'm off to a really good start in February. I've got 6 wins in a row, going for 7 in a row tonight. So hopefully we can keep that going, run that package up for us so they don't take it down, because they will. If the packages aren't selling, they'll take it down. So we can't let that happen. Also, there's a $69 Valentine's Day special. I'll get a chuckle out of that the rest of the week. I think we're promoting that the rest of the week. It'll every time I see that, we've been running that for years now. It always makes me laugh. Anyway. All right, let's get back to it. There's a good one in the ACC tonight that's taking a little bit of money. I'm going to go to Jake here. He says, any thoughts on Clemson? My thought is I thought that number was kind of ridiculous at the open. I had to look at the standings, and then I'm sitting there like, see, this is what I'm talking about, Rob, with the ACC. All these teams play such different schedules that it's like I lose track of like who's where in the conference. And then suddenly you're sitting there and Clemson's 10-1. And you're like, how'd that happen? Who have they played? You know what I mean? Like they're all these teams are playing such different league schedules that it's hard to put a ton of stock into the league, into like the league record, because there are some teams in the ACC right now that have played entirely different schedules to this point. How do you rate like one team versus another in the conference when that's the case? I do think it makes for an interesting, I think it makes for an interesting like handicap. And I think that there's probably some value to be had when we get to this point in the season and you have like an ACC record and teams haven't even played remotely the same teams. So in this case, Rob, at first glance, I said, man, that is a big number for Virginia Tech to be catching on the road tonight. I mean, I like Brad Brownell and Clemson as much as the next person, but were you kind of shocked that was 9.5 at the open?
Yeah, and to your point, Adam, when you go over this Clemson schedule, they have not played Duke. They have not played Virginia. They haven't played Louisville. They haven't played North Carolina. Who have they played to get to 10-1, right? That's the top 5 of the top, or 4 of the top 6 in the league. They did, to their credit, played Miami of Florida, won the game, played NC State, lost in overtime. But, you could argue that Louisville, North Carolina, Duke, and Virginia are 4 of the – you could argue they're the 4 top teams if you wanted to argue against Clemson's soft schedule, actually. So, to your point, yes, Virginia Tech has surprised me all season long. Their ability to score, The basketball is good here. Clemson's had a tendency to be able to shut these type teams down. Nobody's scoring on them, Adam. Absolutely nobody's scoring points on them. It took NC State overtime to get to 80. But, I mean, you just go down this list, 55, 64, 52, 63, 59, 50, 61. SMU could only get to 70. It's hard to score on Brownell's team. And if you take any bit of Virginia Tech's offense away, I don't know that they're good enough defensively to handle Clemson, even down low. Now, that being said, does that make Clemson 9 points better when we really don't have a good assessment of how good they really are? But I would counter argue that point by just saying teams in Virginia Tech's weight class in this league, Clemson is 10-1 against, basically 8-1 against. And so from that perspective, you would say, yeah, at home, they should be able to handle these guys. The total being set at 136.5 tells you not a lot of points scored. And when you're in that 8.5 range, Adam, it's hard to lay that type of price in a game where you're not going to see a lot of points. Duke did it last night. They beat Pittsburgh like 70-56. That's kind of the thing you're looking for if you bet Clemson here. And it's not out of the realm of possibility. But Virginia Tech, they might have just a little bit or one too many offensive options for Clemson to hold to 56 points here and get that type of a win. So for me, again, man, these guys were coming out of the box here with some games that I can't take a firm stance on. But I would say, off of what I've seen this year, Clemson is capable of handling this weight class, especially on their home floor. Obviously, money thought 9.5 was too much. I even see a 7.5 out there, Adam. It's stray, but I see a 7.5. I think I would lean Clemson. Total, I have no opinion on. I think that number's in a really, really good spot.
Yeah, my personal number, I was at 7.1 here, Clemson minus 7.1. So definitely enough. I look for a little bit. I look for like a two point or more edge to fire. I certainly thought about Virginia Tech, and I guess I guess what kind of kept me off was going back to something that you said about like Clemson defensively just being like, I've said this for years. Brad Brownell is the best coach in the ACC that no one ever gives any credit. This has been going on for a while. He is a tremendous coach. He's got this team playing great defense, and this is every year though. This is every year. Like Clemson in this league is always an afterthought when they really like a lot of times like shouldn't be. They shouldn't be this year. They're in the top 25. They're 10-1 yet. It still feels like they're a little bit of an afterthought at times. I was impressed with Virginia Tech over the weekend, hanging around with NC State. That was a game. I thought they were going to get blown out in that game, Rob. I thought that set up for a Will Wade massacre blowout type game. And, Virginia Tech sort of took the punch in the face early, went down double digits and hung around and covered 10.5. I kind of feel like that's what you're going to be doing here. I don't know if I see Virginia Tech winning this game, but based on the way that they've played some of these better teams, right? Duke, they kind of did the same thing, hung around. I don't think they covered the Duke game, but, they hung around and lost by 14 and didn't really like, they took that early punch in that one as well, but didn't get completely blown out. I could see the back door being open for VTech here. They've been a little bit better offensively. The last like month or so, they dropped 89 on Notre Dame. They came into the Dome. Not that either of those teams deserve to even be discussed at this point. Syracuse, awful. Somehow taking money like someone knows the final score at this point. I don't know if we'll talk about that one or not, but come into the Dome and get a win. And then this series of games, the game they should have won, they won against Georgia Tech. They really weren't awful against Louisville, covered 14.5. I think that was one that they kind of hung around the number. They did just enough to get inside it. Did that against NC State. We're a bucket away from doing that against Duke. So if you have 9.5, I don't hate the Virginia Tech side. I don't think I would take it at the worst number at this point, but certainly a VTech lean there for me, Rob.
Yeah, it's just an interesting game. I mean, Clemson at home. And they haven't been home a lot in league, Adam. I think I just counted 4 home games in league, but 3 out of the 4 times they've won by this margin
Big,
at home.
big game coming up for Clemson this weekend. I don't know. That could be another angle for VTech. Like, if you may have Clemson take a more business-like approach here, right? Like they might, if they get ahead, especially if they're up by 10, they might take the air out of the ball a little bit. Got Duke coming up this weekend. That's a big one. So yeah, I think there's merit. A couple people asked me about Virginia Tech on Twitter prior to the show. I couldn't talk you off of that, especially if you got in at the good number, especially if you got in at 9 or 9.5.
Right.
That's I think you have a decent bet at this point with the Hokies. All right, Rob, let's head back to the SEC. Mad Max, thank you for the donation to the show. We very much appreciate it. He says he's leaning Alabama team total over 85.5. He said Ole Miss gave up 84 to Tennessee. He likes the -7.5 too. Now, I guess my quick thought on the total here, Rob. I don't know that those two things are necessarily equal. I go back to last year. Ole Miss actually won this game in Tuscaloosa. And the one, I guess their path to victory here, Rob, or playing the game that they would want to play, is to kind of make it slow and ugly. So if Ole Miss can do that, team total might not be the way to go. If they can't, of course, Alabama, when they are playing the game that they want to play, they're probably trying to get up and over that number. So, Rob, do you agree or disagree with Mad Max? Are you seeing over Bama or under Ole Miss? How do you see this one?
Well, the one thing I could say is Chris Beard, we know his reputation, right? And recently for Ole Miss, the defense, if nothing else, has gotten better. The Tennessee game that Max points out is kind of the outlier over the course of their last 5, where they only gave up 78 to Auburn, high-scoring team, 72 to Kentucky, high-scoring team, 71 to Vandy, high-scoring team, 79 to Texas, certainly another high-scoring team. So you got 4 teams in their last 5 that they've held under 80, and here you're asking for 86. Obviously now, I don't know that any of those is as capable of imposing their offensive will and their style of play on an opponent as Alabama is. Alabama, it just doesn't matter home, road, doesn't matter where they go, neutral. You're going to end up playing their game. They may lose to you. They may give you 95 and they may lose, but you're going to end up playing their style of game. And especially if Ole Miss gets behind in this game and tempo picks up, those things kind of lend themselves to over the number. I honestly don't know how this Charles Bediako news affects Alabama here. I don't know, negatively or positively. I don't know. Certainly, it takes away from their defensive ability at the rim. Certainly, it takes away from their capability on the glass, which Nate Oates has kind of complained about with this team all season long. And those two things right there, if Ole Miss can find their way to the rim a little bit easier, which prior to Bediako teams were finding, and even with him, they were still finding their way to the rim, right? I think they gave up 100 to somebody with him in the lineup. That would be my stipulation. If Ole Miss at home stays close in this game and doesn't have to go completely rapid for 40 minutes with Bama because they get down 20-6 to start the game, then this game, Alabama may not get to that number. They may not. I was at 4 of the last 5 teams against Ole Miss haven't. And Ole Miss had just come off of 4 straight road games. This is their first home game in ages. Haven't played at home since the 20th of January. Away. So I don't know. I'm giving credence, I think, here to Chris Beard and his ability to draw up defenses and just trying to slow the game down. I want to use Pittsburgh as an example last night, Adam, but I can't even use them as an example because Duke doesn't play fast like Alabama does. So I can't even use that as an example. Duke only getting to 70 in a slower tempo game on an opponent's floor. Generally, I'd be all in on Alabama overs. This one, little skeptical. However, if they react as an angry club to what just went down with Bediako, then that backcourt starts nailing shots, Filion, Aiden Holloway, etc., and it's lights out. So tough call. I would lean under on the Alabama team total, just based on what Ole Miss has been able to do defensively over the course of the last 5 games.
Yeah, I'd lean under too on this one. I don't think Bediako is I think it's more of just a distraction than anyway, little PR distraction. It's like, I don't think it's going to like truly affect the team. Now it will affect their depth, of course, right? Like that's where, just taking his minutes away will take a little bit of a hit. I look at the schedule and I got to think Alabama's got to be exhausted. Look at like they've given up 197 and 92 since February 1st. And this will be their third road game of the third road game of their last 4 games. The one home game was 197 buckyball against Texas A&M. So they put all of that effort into the Auburn game over the weekend to win 96-92. I do feel like this is a little bit of might be an attrition type game for Bama here, right? Where they're just like, I mean, that's 100. Gave up 100 to Florida, got killed. Give up 97 to Texas A&M in an 197 final, and then play a game in the 90s this weekend. And now you got to turn around and play on the road again. So, yeah, I don't think I want any part of an over. I think I'd be looking at unders across the board here because Ole Miss is going to drag this game down. Now, Ole Miss can't play. Their offense isn't very good. So I don't think you can really count on Ole Miss points ever. Right. That's the problem. That's why this game last year, this game was ranked versus ranked. Ole Miss went into Tuscaloosa and won, but Ole Miss was, I believe, in the top 20 at the time. So this year, it's Ole Miss is clearly not that. But if they're going to have any chance in this game, they're just going to have to drag Alabama down with them. So it's really going to come down to who could probably dictate the tempo, which normally would be Bama. But I don't know if it's going to be Bama on the heels of the schedule they've played of late. This kind of feels like a game where they've just got to will their way to a win. And if that's the case, I don't think it's going over. All right, let's head back to the chat here. Going to find Rob, as soon as the sweatshirt's getting compliments here. I know you're dying to talk Missouri Tigers basketball. And listen, I know on a Wednesday like this, I know folks want to okay, I gotta comment on this. Bro, you guys pick Nebraska. That's not 2-0. Gotta listen to the show. Gotta use your ears. Nowhere on the show did we ever pick Nebraska. We gave a breakdown of the game. I think I went as far as to say, if I like had a gun to my head and I was like in captivity and someone was like, we're going to pull the trigger. You have to make a pick on this game. I think I said I would have taken Nebraska. We did not pick Nebraska. We gave out 2 picks on the show yesterday and they went 2-0. The point of this is to just, we're going to give a couple of picks out. If you want the picks, I've said this a million times. If you want the picks, they're at WagerTalk.com. That's where the picks are. I went 2-0 yesterday. Rob was 2-3. We went 4-3 combined. That's where the picks are. If you want just an hour worth of discussion with a couple picks on the show, we're going to give that to you. We did not pick Nebraska. We gave a discussion of the game that I think was a more pro Nebraska discussion. But yeah, use your ears. Listen to the show before you come at me saying we picked Nebraska. All right, Rob, back to the show. The people apparently want picks. Apparently discussion is not enough. So I'm going to ask you right now. Do you have something that you want to lock in for the parlay, or do you want me to go? I'd prefer you to go because I have no clue what I want to use yet. So it's up to you. Or do you want me to go back to the chat? We still have 22 minutes.
Yeah, go to the chat here real quick. If they want to talk Missouri, Texas A&M, we will.
Yeah,
if they
you know what?
I
didn't put the shirt on for my health this morning, although it is a sweatshirt and I'm cold as hell because we're apparently more snow here for us in central New York. Did not realize that was happening again today. I thought it was warming up from our sub-zero week, and apparently it's not. So yeah, let's stay in the SEC. Mizzou, Texas A&M, Rob Bino, a rare, strong total opinion for me here. I see points in this game. Do you agree? Tell me how there's not a million points in this game, Missouri, Texas A&M.
Yeah, I do agree. I don't know how there's not a million points. And I'm going to go back to something that happened a couple of weeks ago. And actually, thanks to whoever the guy in the chat was who came in that day when Mizzou played Alabama and actually afterwards credited us for talking him off of Missouri, which we're never here to talk you off of things, but I guess our analysis made him think twice about betting Mizzou in that game. I see the same situation here, Adam. I really do. A&M off back-to-back losses, now home. Missouri off back-to-back wins on the road. Alabama and A&M play the same exact style. Buckyball a little more unique in its nature, not necessarily in its overall composition or style. It's up tempo, but it's extreme tempo basketball, and we're going to get 90. And can you stop us from getting 90? I see Missouri walking into the same hornet's nest that they walked into against Alabama. In that particular game, that day, the total ran its way up to 154 because Mizzou didn't score, only 64 points in that game. I tend to believe that they'll get a few more here in A&M. And we're not asked to get that many more. I think the number is 157.5. At last look, I think it was 157.5. So they're asking us to climb from 154 against Bama at Coleman to 158 here in College Station. A&M might get more than 90. They could get 92, 93. Mizzou gets 67. The 64 Mizzou put up by Mizzou was kind of rare in their season-long numbers. It was I don't know if it was the lowest output in SEC play by them so far, but certainly they're more capable of 70 than they are 64. So for me, again, I use the word mathematics, but again, we have to use mathematics to come up with these plays too. I think sheer mathematics tell you on top of the spot. Again, I see this as the same setup as we saw against Alabama, where Bama was off a loss. Missouri was, I think that was the game where Mark Mitchell chucked in a 3 at the buzzer, and then they had to go on the road to play Alabama, and they just got swamped. They may get swamped again, but I think they'll score more than 64. So for me, this isn't over. I don't know which way the question was directed, whether it was directed side or total, but I've rode the fence all morning long here. I will take a stance with this one. I think this game gets over 157.5.
Yeah, I kind of love the over here. Just the Texas A&M should be able to play the style that they want to play against Missouri. And, I actually woke up this morning looking at this game being like, man, if that, I kind of expect Texas A&M to take a little money. And I really want to make I really wanted to make a case for Missouri. But, my number comes right. I'm right. I'm at Texas A&M -6. So I said, well, if they take money and it gets steamed, let's say it goes to 7.5 or 8, maybe I could do that, because I do think Missouri will be able to run some offense and score enough to stay in this game. But I've kind of talked myself off of that because just of how efficient the buckyball style could be in this game. And that's kind of kept me off. I do see 7s popping, and maybe it will go there. But again, I think I'm pretty much off the side and looking entirely toward the total, because here's the thing. If Texas A&M is scoring, they're hitting their threes, and it's an efficient buckyball performance, and then you get Missouri doing just enough to hang around, Rob, then you hit the jackpot, because you're probably in extension area, right? If it comes in that 6, 7, 8 point range, Missouri's going to go to the rim. They're going to be able to score at the rim. So unless you get a scenario where they're chasing so badly that they're just chucking threes, that's going to be a Texas A&M blowout that probably doesn't go over, because that's not the game Missouri wants to play. That if Missouri can hang around long enough in this game, get the ball inside, score at the rim where they can score against Texas A&M, you could have, you're probably well into the 80s. I'd be surprised if A&M isn't hitting 90 at some point. So I'm with you, Rob. Points all day in College Station tonight.
Okay, so can we take a pause in the show here right now so we can give half of the parlay leg? Because
We absolutely can. Yes.
I might as well. I mean, I do this a lot of days on the show. I kind of try to, questions will be asked on games that I have for clients, and I try to dance around it a little bit, give the best analysis I can without actually giving away, like you just flat out give away plays. Kudos to you. The audience should appreciate that. I try to dance around it.
We'll have to see if ownership agrees with that. But, I think if I come on and talk about it, it's hard to not give it out.
I'll take your spot today, and I'll just flat give one away. I talked a lot about the game without saying exactly the direction I took, but A&M team total over. This number, Adam, to me was crazy. 81.5. 82.5s are out there as well. But you can get 81.5. Use whatever you want for the show. I think A&M's in for 85 or more. Adam, enhanced my analysis, so you got double the CBB firepower analysis on that game.
Double the firepower, exactly.
As far as A&M goes, I just think, that's going to be my half of the parlay leg. Like I say, I see the same situation that happened in Alabama. So give me A&M over their team total today.
Yeah, I think they score 90. I think there's going to be a lot of points in this game. So someone, Biddy, appreciate the donation. He says, know the difference between a pick and a lean. That was certainly a pick for Rob Bino. Listen, I'm not getting on anyone personally. Actually, it was more because people were, it's we're trying to give out the best. Really, this show is probably more geared to people doing their own handicapping and wanting just to, to sort of hear both sides. So, I don't know. I think it may have been the caffeine. I got a little fired up there. Cam says DC for Trig today, taking a break from the rain. No, we just finished it already. And if I ever went back for a second rain, I might trash my house. I can't, that's too much. That's too much. Rob, they can't, it reminds me of, they canceled. So Siena canceled the football program the year before I got there. So I was a freshman at Siena in the fall of 2004, and 2003 was the final football year, which means a lot of these senior football players they just stayed at Siena, and they weren't going to go try to transfer to play 1 year somewhere. So we just had all these just jacked up meatheads that had nothing to do walking around because they just, they would have normally been playing football. And they would just throw a party. And then every once in a while they'd be like, let's rev it up. And they just start punching holes in the sheetrock, Rob. Animals. That's what I'd be doing if I did a second energy drink. That's why this is even aggressive. I should be drinking a water right now, but you know what? It's Wednesday. There's a million games. So we gotta bring the heat here. Got to come in with energy. And I probably have too much of it today. Some would say. So, all right, we got another one from Mad Max, and then I'll figure out a parlay leg. So let's hit Mad Max's game. Appreciate the donations to the show. That's our other goal. We want to out donate, because I think we take these donations and donate them to charity. I think we did Opportunity Village last time. It's not always the same one, but Rob and my goal is to get far more donations than any other show, just because we just want to be those guys. So appreciate you donating to the show. Mad Max says, Michigan playing like a powerhouse again since the loss to Wisconsin. Cover last for ATS. Is this another smash spot? I'm leaning yes. Also thoughts on the team total. Rob Bino, who brought that up? I think that was us. I think we said, all right, Michigan, they're playing all these games where they're winning and not covering. And then it was the Michigan State game on a Friday night where we thought the pendulum swung too far. They went in and won that game, and now they're starting to cover games left and right, probably because the pendulum hasn't swung far enough back in the other direction. I also think they benefited from Penn State being a little bit shorthanded the other night. So I guess you could make the argument that, are they getting overinflated again? Maybe, but I guess I'll throw this to you. Smash spot for the Wolverines tonight. Do you agree with Mad Max?
I do, in the sense that listen, Chris Collins' team is never going to give up the fight, but their season, Adam, is going straight down the drain. here, and they're not even good at stopping the opponents from scoring anymore. Like, that's one thing you could lean on with Collins. You get some 3-point shooters, you get a pretty good defense, you get a pedestrian style offense, you mix it all together, and you're competitive in games. Just played Iowa as hard as they could on the road, lose again. But the game before, beat by 40 by Illinois, which is Michigan's weight class, Illinois. They had no answers for Illinois whatsoever. And Illinois brings a lot of the same traits to the table that Michigan brings to the table. And I think that I'm thinking back to the day when we had the Michigan State game. And I think we pointed out, and pretty solidly, that while Michigan State is known for their toughness, their glasswork, whatever, a good rebounding team statistically, that Michigan probably has even more size and can be even better interior-wise than Michigan State was. And it rang true. Tom Izzo kind of said so after the game. Those guys are grown men. And I just don't know that Northwestern has the horses to contend here. I really don't. Now, again, you're absolutely right. You're always paying a tax with this Michigan team, especially now that they're winning again. The odds makers have put bigger numbers attached to them. I'm trying to get the current so I can kind of give a solid opinion on the team total question that was asked. So we're looking at 84.5 in Northwestern. The look ahead for Michigan is only a home game at UCLA. They'll probably be glad to get home on Saturday against UCLA, but I don't know that that's a major look ahead. Purdue and Duke are the two behind that. So maybe the UCLA game, just projecting, guys, maybe the UCLA game is a look ahead for Michigan because they have Purdue and Duke after that. But here, I don't see it that way. I think this is just a game where Michigan rolls in. They just beat Ohio State by 21, took Penn State by 31, 41. Again, Northwestern's never going to give up the fight, but I just don't think there's a lot of fight, even if they come 100%. I think they gave it all against Iowa, probably a rout. And to Mad Max's thought about over the team total of 84.5, I couldn't argue you off because Michigan is one of those teams that can roll out of bed and put up 85. And if this gets out of hand, Dusty May is not, Adam, give me your feeling on this, but I don't view Dusty May at all as a coach who lets off the gas pedal in games like this. Like, if he's up 82-52 with 3 minutes left, they're just going to keep scoring. They'll get to 90. So to me, you don't have a coach who's sympathetic in that respect. He's just going to win big. I think you're probably onto something with the Michigan team total and the smash spot.
Yeah, listen, it wasn't Dusty May not trying to cover in those games. It was the numbers in the games that Michigan, there were the string of games. So they crushed USC, and then they played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think like 7 or 8 games. I mean, where they were just being asked to cover egregious numbers. Like, right. But like, Rob, how many times did we even bet against Michigan in that stretch? Probably 0, because why they're still very capable of doing it. Right. So it's like, but I mean, I remember some of those games, it was like Ohio State on a Friday night, and they were like a 15-point favorite. They won by 12. Like it was basically that. This is kind of that. Although if you just want to go straight off like numbers and stuff, I've got Michigan minus 17.2 here. Not quite the 2 points I'd like, but I still lean toward Michigan based on my number. I make the Michigan number in that to get to that 85.9. So again, not exactly what I would like to get there, but it definitely is on the other side of 85. So to me, I think the market has come back to the right place, but you won't find me on Northwestern here. Let's put it that way. So Mad Max, good luck if that's the way you decide to go. I cannot talk you off of the Wolverines. All right, Rob, I'm gonna throw one out. I did not play this for clients, but it's certainly one I'm kind of thinking of a little bit today. And I'm gonna go with a similar theory. So last night I cashed with George Washington, and part of my reasoning there was that matchup. So they had been missing Rafael Castro. They looked really bad for a couple games without him. And I looked and I said, you know what? Last night, Rhode Island was not the worst matchup for them without him, and the market had moved considerably. I took George Washington. They covered. Marshall is in almost the same spot tonight. So if you haven't followed Marshall, Matthew Van Komen, their 7'4" center, the sort of end all be all to that team, at least it's been this year. Of course, he's new to the team this year, comes from Elon, has not played the last couple games. And they really struggled against Miami, Ohio over the weekend without him, although they were going to probably struggle against Miami of Ohio anyway. It's just they had no chance with Van Komen not in there. He was in a walking boot, so my guess is he's out again. I think the only reason I didn't fire this for clients, Rob, is this number. I was hoping to get closer to a pick. I wonder if the market still thinks there's a chance he's going to play. And then this is a scenario where he gets announced out and maybe Old Dominion takes a little money. So like that to me, if you were to give me Marshall pick right here, I'd probably end up on my client card. But at 2.5, that to me still says, okay, they kind of think he might play. I don't think he's going to play. So this is something to keep an eye on throughout the day because you may actually get a better number on Marshall. But this is the type of matchup where it's just like, I don't think it matters. Similar to George Washington last night against Rhode Island, you got two things working for you here. One, it's now going to be their third game without him. So like the further you get away from the injury, we talk about this all the time, the further you get away from the injury, the less the injury isn't already baked into the number. And then Old Dominion, they're just kind of poor offensively. So that's a team where it's like, I don't know that they're going to be able to do a ton of damage on offense regardless. So I don't think his absence is quite as big of a deal. And then of course, without him, Marshall can go a little bit smaller, maybe play a little bit quicker. They kind of, Corny Jackson kind of revamped that style a little bit to accommodate Van Komen. They started going a little bit more of a zone. So maybe they just get back to last year. So I'll put Marshall -2.5 in the parlay. We have a couple minutes, Rob. Does that make you want to look at the over, knowing that Van Komen might not be in there to slow things down a little bit?
Yeah, I would have asked you that. And I thought you kind of answered it for me when you said Old Dominion is not offensively quite capable of taking full advantage. But the total's been pushed up, Adam, from 151 to 154.5, which generally I like to give these line movements. I would love to give these line movements credit, but I never do because I think they're always based when they're of this size. I feel like they're based on injury news mostly and not fundamental matchup. But it would make sense that when you take the 7'4" guy off of the rim, maybe it's a little easier for Old Dominion to score. And if Marshall goes quicker without the big center, I've been burnt on Michigan totals on Marshall totals a couple of times within the last month. But this one just seems like, off of your analysis, they'll go quicker, not as much rim defense. So the other side gets a few more. Maybe it isn't over, or maybe they've just pushed it to a place where it's not attainable now. But I do know Marshall in the past capable of, 80 plus on any given night.
Yeah, for the parlay, and we are at that time part of the show where we're going to recap the parlay. I'm going to lay the 2.5. All I was saying is if Old Dominion got hit at some point during the day and suddenly that money line was in like the -120 range, which I don't necessarily think it will be. I might consider, I'd like it more. Obviously, I think it goes without saying, I'd prefer to not have to lay 2.5. But I don't want to not lay it and then turn around and have to lay like -145, -150 juice. So right here, I'm going to go Marshall. We'll just keep it very simple for the parlay. Marshall -2.5, -110 against the spread. That's what it is everywhere right now. And then Rob, we're going with another 2-teamer today. If we hit this 2-teamer, we're pretty much even on parlay of the day for the year within like a tenth of a unit. So, plus 260 odds. Rob Bino's got Texas A&M team total over 82.5. For me, Marshall -2.5. Let's see if we can make it a third straight 2-team parlay. I've got the 5% play tonight. That's up on my page. Better way to get it is to just do the joint package, myself and Vino. Let's cash some more tickets tonight. We'll see you guys in the morning for another mid-major Thursday edition of Full Court Press, my favorite day of the week. See you guys tomorrow. Good luck tonight.